ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। ॐ सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम्। सर्ववेदान्तसिद्धान्त गोचरं तमगोचरं गोविन्दं परमानन्दं सद्गुरुं प्रणतोऽस्म्यहम्। Hari Om. Salutations to all. So we saw how the bhav should be as far as the body is concerned, how one should relate to the body so that one can drop this body identification and experience the bliss of samadhi. And in that state of samadhi, in that fire of samadhi, the root cause of bondage and sorrow completely gets destroyed through the apprehension of the self. Then we also saw in 419 that when that person comes out of that state also, the person never forgets that I am that pure consciousness and still lives in the world with that complete awareness, with that intuitive understanding that I am Brahman, I am consciousness. And the role that one is playing, one knows that it is an illusory role. In that context, we had seen the example of the actor and the role that the actor plays. Now, 420 and 421, a few verses actually, they speak about the, one can say the result or the benefit of this knowledge. Other is it also gives uh, the steps, what leads to what. So the milestones one will come to know, which has been said earlier, but more reinforcement now. So 420. वैराग्यस्य फलं बोधः बोधस्योपरतिः फलं स्वानन्दानुभवात् शान्तिः एषैवोपरते फलम्. So he says vairagyasya phalam bodha. The result of vairagya is knowledge. Bodhasya uparatihi phalam. The result of this knowledge is the capability to withdraw. Svanandanubhavat shantihi. When I learn to withdraw from the senses, I come to experience the self within and I experience that supreme peace. And Svanandanubhavat shantihi esha eva uparatehe phalam. And this is the result of the uparati. Shanti is the result of uparati, and because of that shanti, swanandanubhava, person comes to experience the self. In a translation, it is said swanandanubhavat shantihi shantihi esha eva uparatehe phalam. So the translation is quite the fruit of withdrawal is experience of the blissful self. and peace is the result of the blissful self experience. Because that is a loose translation. Because Sanskrit grammar wise, Shantihi is that feminine gender, Esha is a feminine pronoun. So Esha Shantihi Uparatehe Phalam and Swananda Anubhavat Shantihi. Both ways actually it can be taken. Okay. So Vairagyasya Phalam Bodha. The result of Vairagya is Bodha. Bodha means knowledge. Now what knowledge is this? This is not the intuitive knowledge of the self. This is the intellectual conviction that Brahman alone is real and that is my true nature. And as a result of that conviction that happiness is my true self, there is a certain withdrawal. Bodhasya uparati phalam. When I know happiness is not outside, then the mind has to withdraw. The senses have to withdraw. So now sometimes one feels that okay, vairagya when one has, then automatically mind control, sense control, etc. will happen. Because in the sadhan chatushtaya we saw vivek leads to vairagya, vairagya leads to shama, dhamma, then uparati. So there uparati was described as the ability to withdraw the senses and engage and get absorbed. So Tattvabodh gave the definition of uparati as swadharmanushthanam eva. By engaging in the work that one loves, then the mind will withdraw from other preoccupations, will get absorbed only in one aspect. What is this uparati here now? This uparati is a little different. This is a deeper level of uparati, where it is not just the withdrawal from the objects, it is withdrawal from the objects plus withdrawal from the body identification and from the mind also. That's why it says Swananda Anubhava. Uparati will lead to Swananda Anubhava. And that will lead to peace. So this uparati is not just withdrawal from the sense temptations. This uparati is withdrawal from the mind itself. So the result of vairagya, no doubt, is the certain absence of craving for the sense pleasures. That is how vairagya is defined. Absence of craving for sense pleasures is vairagya. Tad vairagyam jihasaya darshana shravanadivihi. Vivek Chudamani said earlier. From the body to Brahma. Dehadi Brahma Paryante Anitya Bhoga Vastuni. From the body to Brahma Loka, all the sense pleasures which are born through the contact of sense objects. Darshana Shravanadivihi. There is no craving for any of them. Now that state is Vairagya. Where there is no desire, there is no craving that I must eat this, go there, enjoy this, no craving. The result of that craving is this knowledge. What does that mean? See, the knowledge of the self, even at the intellectual level, can sustain only in a mind which has good vairagya. Deep, intense vairagya, when it is there, then only the mind will be able to sustain this knowledge. Otherwise, one will listen to this knowledge, go out, again indulge. The knowledge then gets dissipated. I'm not even talking about the intuitive knowledge of the self. I'm talking about the intellectual clarity and the knowledge that I am Brahman. Happiness is not in the world outside. That knowledge to remain here all the time. Vairagya is necessary for that. Without that, one will listen to it in satsang, one will get the knowledge, And now and then, if one is reflecting, one will think about that knowledge. But rest of the time, if Vairagya is not there, one will just again indulge. So here he says, Vairagyasya phalam bodha. This knowledge has to come. This knowledge, what is the use of this knowledge? If I get the knowledge and if I really am able to hold on to that knowledge because I have enough Vairagya, there are no holes. So if we consider our mind as a vessel, then Vairagya is like is that which protects the vessel from all the leakages. If that Vairagya layer is removed, the vessel has lots of leakages. So then all that knowledge will seep away out of that. But with Vairagya, that knowledge will remain inside. So that knowledge, when it remains inside, that one very clearly knows I am not the body, mind, intellect, I am pure consciousness, happiness is not in the world outside. So naturally it has to lead to Uparati. Because if Uparati does not happen because of this knowledge, then the knowledge is useless. Means either I have not thought through properly on it, I don't understand its depth and implication, or the sense cravings are too powerful that even though I may know, I am not able to control. So Uparati is not happening. So if I know, I have studied, I have understood, I know intellectually, then if I am not able to withdraw my mind away from the sense objects and from the body identification in the seat of contemplation, then that means that one of these two is the reason. Either the knowledge is not clear, or my sense temptations and cravings are far too strong, which means Vairagya is not enough. The Vasana is still more powerful than the Vairagya. So that Jnana and Vairagya are weaker, the Vasana is more powerful. It need not be Vasana only for sense objects. It can be Dehatma Bhav also. I am this body. That is much more stronger. That Viveka is not being done properly. Atma Anatma Vivek is not done properly. And based on that, the Vairagya is not strong. One is still thinking Atma means this I, this Mr. So and so, this body. So Vivek needs to be strengthened, Vairagya needs to be strengthened so that that Vasana becomes weaker through Pratipaksha Bhavana, through tapasya, through self-control. One has to strengthen this Vairagya. When that Vairagya is strong, then this knowledge also will have its deep impact. Automatically, one will be able to withdraw from the Jiva Bhav, from the Dehatma Bhav, that I am the body, I am the Jiva. That Uparati is what is the result of this knowledge. Like when we say that Shravan has to happen, Manan has to happen, then sit for Nididhyasan. And what am I doing in Nididhyasan? Detached from the BMI, attached to the self. That detached from the BMI is what is referred to as the Uparati here. I am not the BMI, I am pure consciousness. That steady contemplation is, in other words, indicated here through the word Uparati. So, Bodhasya Uparatihi Phalam. That intellectual conviction must give rise to the ability to withdraw from the body, mind, intellect, not just from the world outside. That is the first step. The second step is detach from the identification with the BMI. Bodhasya Uparatihi Phalam. And when that person is able to withdraw completely, sorry, when one withdraws completely from the attachment to the BMI, what will one experience? Swanandanubhava. Swanandanubhava. One will experience great bliss of the self, Swananda. Every other pleasure is created because of our contact of the senses with the sense objects. So I eat something, I hear some music, I listen to, anything. I watch some whatever, some series that is going on the Netflix, or I eat some good food, I talk to some people, so many things. These are all the emotional pleasure is there. I spend time with my family, people whom I love, intellectual satisfaction of achieving something. Those are all born of sense contact, dependent on object, people, situations. This is Swa Ananda. It is a self, the bliss of the self, which is independent. It is always there. How strange, no? It is that it is always there. It is independent. It doesn't require any effort. It is my nature. Leaving that, I am running behind that which is not independent, for which I have to struggle so much, which is not my true self. What it will give me is temporary pleasure, but still I will run. That's the strange part, how the mind plays the trick. So, one who has learned to withdraw experiences, Swananda Anubhavat Shantihi. And this Shanti is a result of this Ananda Anubhava. One becomes absolutely peaceful, no disturbances in the mind at all. This is the peace, the final peace, what we speak of as supreme peace, absolute peace. What was said as in the Bible, they say, peace that passeth all understanding. The peace of the self is this. Why is it said here? Because many times when we say Anand, we confuse that Anand with excitement. Swananda does not have any excitement. It is serene, peaceful. At the moment we think of peace, we also think of quietude, no thought, blank. So it is not that. It is the bliss of the self. At the same time, it is not excitement. Then what it is, we can't explain. One has to experience it. It is one's own true self. Maximum one can use only such words here as they have used here. Swananda, Shantihi, all that. So now this is the progression of how Vairagya must lead to intellectual conviction, that must help me to withdraw from body identification, that will help me to abide in the self, and the result of that self abidance is absolute peace and bliss. So in that way, this is a benefit, that if I follow this path, what will I get? What I am seeking is what I will get. Everybody seeks that supreme happiness, absolute peace. That is what one will get. Now, continuing that further, yadyuttarottara purvantu nishphalam nivritti parama triptihi anando nupama swataha. So what it said here, yadyat uttara abhavaha. Yad uttara abhavaha purvantu nishphalam. In this sequence, as we keep progressing, when he says that there are no succeeding stages, the preceding ones become useless. Meaning, nivrittihi, paramatriptihi, anandaha, anupama swatah. Nivritti is automatic cessation of the objective world. Paramatripti, supreme satisfaction. And ananda, anupama swatah, unequaled bliss, follow as a matter of course. This line seems to be little confusing. If there are no further stages, the previous stages also become nullified, as though they become useless. What does that mean? Simple meaning, Vairagya, Bodha, Uparati, uh, Ananda, Shanti. If one does not follow this, the natural progression, whatever one has done till now, that also will go waste. Why? See, if Vairagya is not there, and that person has sense cravings, then whatever little viveka that person has done, that is also useless. That will not serve any purpose. So very important it is that we move ahead, because if we don't, we will fall down. Because the mind doesn't know how to stay in one level. Either it will go up or it will go down. If I don't go up properly, to stay there requires much more effort. You can apply in any of this, especially suppose you see a sport like rock climbing. Now if one has to do rock climbing, one has to have a lot of strength in the fingers, in the palm, in the hand, shoulders, because the whole body weight is on these two hands and the shoulders and all that. One climbs up. Now, if one gets tired, one can't wait there. Of course, if harness is there, then one takes some rest. That's a different matter. But otherwise, one can't wait because that is much more difficult. One has to keep going up, up, up. Otherwise, one will fall. One goes down. So that's what he says here, that if I am practicing a particular step, so if I am having vairagya, it must lead me to bodha. If it doesn't lead me to bodha, then that vairagya will become useless and I will fall back. Same applies to all the steps. So Gurudev has also explained that very nicely in his commentary, in this first para of this commentary, where he says this: if you have objective knowledge but no vairagya, that knowledge is of no use. If you are practicing self-withdrawal but it does not lead to subjective knowledge of the higher, the self-withdrawal is only escapism. See, so every step, it must lead to the next step. Like this self-withdrawal must lead to the knowledge of the self. Body identification, if I withdraw from, it should lead to knowledge of the self. If it doesn't lead to the next step, the previous step becomes nullified, useless. That vairagya also, that bodha will become useless, that uparati also will become useless. Meaning it is not complete. Why suddenly this is being said here? This is being said so that we understand the importance, that how much effort we have put so far, that should not go for a waste. Means put more purushartha, more effort is required. We should remember that the higher we go, the more challenging the journey becomes. If the journey becomes more challenging, means much more effort is required. One cannot relax, one cannot become complacent, because then whatever hard work is done, all goes away, because it's very natural, because of years of practice, of so many lives, actually not years, of many lives, to be extroverted has become very natural. Now to make that mind withdraw takes effort. Now having withdrawn, if the abidance in the self doesn't happen, again that mind will become extrovert, because vasana pressure will again rise. What does this mean? At every step, I must put great amount of effort to catch the next step properly. Without holding on to the next one properly, I cannot leave this one. Even in rock climbing, it is like that. At any point in time, two, no, 3-point technique it is called. 2 hands, 2 feet, 4 we are using. At any point, 3 must be on the rock. 1 may be used to go up. If I use one hand, then one hand and 2 other feet must be on the rock. If I'm using one leg, then 2 hands and 1 leg must be on the rock to rise higher. If I don't do that, then I will slip and fall. So the top has to be grasped properly. So the same example here, that the next stage must be grasped properly Then this stage has to be left. And this stage has to be cultivated fully for me to grasp the next step. So they both are very closely connected. If Vairagya is not proper, Bodha will not happen. And until I don't get proper Bodha, my Vairagya will become useless. And so the effort has to be put. It requires great alertness, it requires great amount of effort that one should put in one's own daily life. There will be so many opportunities which come, temptations which come, which can completely throw off the mind off balance and make it again attached to the body. So how much ever I study, so it is like running the car with the brake and the accelerator on. It will go front, come back, go front, come back. It will spoil the whole car. So that's what this shloka is meant for, to tell us that let the efforts be put much more deeply, with much more intensity. And we should know that higher we rise, the greater will be the challenges. But we should also know that grace factor also will be much more. So it is not that we are alone. We should never forget, my nature is Brahman, your nature is Brahman, each one is Brahman only. We are just trying to discover that again because we have forgotten that. So the grace will also work. Our effort also has to be there. So that is one meaning. The first line means this. Now the next line. Nivritti Paramatriptihi Ananda Anupama Swataha. This withdrawal from the world is Nivritti. World and the body identification. That Nivritti will lead to Param Tripti, absolute satisfaction, supreme satisfaction. And that supreme satisfaction is actually Ananda. So if this Nivritti has not led me to supreme satisfaction, then the Nivritti is not complete. And when the supreme satisfaction one experiences, that is the fulfillment of Nivritti. So if I'm not experiencing supreme satisfaction, that means my Nivritti is not complete. If I am doing complete Nivritti, then satisfaction will be the natural result of it. So each preceding stage will naturally result in the succeeding stage. And when it results in that succeeding stage, that means the previous stage is fulfilled. You know, Gurudev used to say that spiritual life is like a bridge where every step that one takes forward, the bridge behind you is burnt. Meaning, bridge behind you is burnt. What does that mean? That means that if I have finished the earlier step properly and I have graduated into the next step, then the previous thing is over. It is fulfilled. It is not required there. No, but what happens to us? We may not directly get into that. We may oscillate, and for some time we may not be established in the next step. Then what happens? Till you don't get established in the next step, the step remains. So that we don't have to worry about. The idea here only is to make us aware that step 1 must lead to step 2. Until the step 1 doesn't lead to step 2, that step 1 is not complete. So strive to complete, meaning if Vairagya is not strong enough, Bodha will not happen. So get the Vairagya strong, then the Bodha will happen. Then focus on the Bodha. Natural result of that will be Uparati. Now that Uparati will lead to the Atma Anubhav. At any step, if that step is not complete, put efforts in that step properly, fully, so that one naturally graduates to the next step. So that is what this is, that when the next step one has reached, then the previous step will become nullified. If you remember, some time back we had seen this video of Gurudev on the Padmapada story, where every step Padmapada keeps, one lotus appears, and when he takes the next step, the lotus behind burns. Burns meaning it disappears. That is there in your study material folder in this Vivek Chudamani recordings where we have put. If you want, you can listen to that again. It's a very nice video. So that's what this means. So put all efforts, go ahead to the next step and fulfill the previous step properly. There is no question of dilly-dallying. Mind may oscillate, but then one should just get firmly established in the next step so that one doesn't regress, one doesn't fall back. So now that is what this shloka means. In this commentary, third paragraph, Gurudev has said nicely that, not third, sorry, second paragraph, last two lines from the bottom. Evolution is not an accident. It is a logical development and has its stages. Every evolute will have to go through all preceding stages before he can climb to the final stage of evolution. Thus, only an individual who has gone through all the disciplines indicated in the previous verse will really come to live the life of complete detachment from the world outside. He alone will experience a contentment that is unique and a bliss that is incomparable. So this nivritti, what was said in the earlier shloka as uparati, is the same. What is written here as nivritti. So we should not confuse. The earlier shloka is complete by itself. That vairagya leads to bodha, bodha leads to uparati, uparati leads to swananda anubhava, and that is only absolute bliss, shanti. So that is complete by itself. That is reasserted here by using a different word, nivritti. Nivritti paramatripti. So when nivritti happens from the BMI, then there is supreme satisfaction and incomparable bliss. Now, how will that happen? When will this happen? So Shankaracharya ji, he continues to enumerate the result of this knowledge. Drishta dukkheshvanudvego vidyaya prastutam phalam yatkritam bhranti velayam nana karma jugupsitam paschannaro vivekena tatkatham kartumarhati. He says drishta dukkheshu anudvegaha vidyaya prastutam phalam. Whatever results one gets in the world of the finite actions, they are temporary. So they will have craving, they will leave some sorrow also. And especially if there are unfavorable results, then much more sorrow. So drishta dukkheshu anudvega. All the types of worldly pleasure and pain. See, from a spiritual standpoint, as we have always said, every pleasure is pain in disguise. So that's why he says drishta dukkha. He doesn't say drishta sukha dukkha. Like in the Gita, the expression is dukkheshu anudvigna manaha sukheshu vigata spruha. When there is dukkha, then the mind is not disturbed. In sukha, there is no desire for repeating that sukha. That's the quality of a realized master. Sthita prajna stadochyate. Here there is no word sukha at all. Why? Because everything that is drishta is dukkha only. No, that is not correct. No, that is only the fact. How much ever time we may take to accept it, but the fact is, whatever is drishta is jada, whatever is jada is alpa, that is dukkha only. Yad drishtam tad jadam. Yad jadam tad anityam. What is seen is inert. Whatever is experienced as other than I is inert and it is dukkha only. Identified with the BMI, then we say that no, it is some pleasure for the BMI, some satisfaction for the mind and emotions and intellect and all that. But It is all temporary, so it is dukkha. Drishta dukkha anudvega. The mind not disturbed. Drishta dukkheshu anudvega. What will be, when will that happen? Vidyaya prastutam phalam. That is the result of the knowledge of Vedanta. See, forget all the other stages also. Even this much can come to us, that is called Vairagya. That the knowledge that I have studied Vedanta. So I understand that whatever I experience in the world is temporary, is destructible, and it is going to die. It is going to go. If I expect permanent happiness from the impermanent thing, that is stupidity. But that's what one is expecting. So if I've studied Vedanta, at least that much clarity must be there that if any circumstances happen, whether pleasure, pain, whatever it is, I know it is temporary. Why get the mind disturbed with it? Habitually, our mind gets disturbed. There is no doubt in that. But that's where sadhana comes into play. I have to again calm down the mind, make it again understand ki what are you getting agitated about. Anyway, it is temporary. It is bound to go. Whether it is wealth or power, position, people, anything comes, it goes. So this knowledge, the more I think about temporary nature of the world and permanent nature of the Atma, more and more Vairagya will happen, more and more Uparati will also happen. That enough now, how much to run behind this? So running behind will stop. So the direction which is right now like this, that running behind will stop. That is Vairagya. And then the Uparati, the turning within will happen. So he says, Drishta dukkheshu anudvegaha vidyaya prastutam phalam. That is the result of this knowledge. Now one may say that the result of this knowledge here can mean also that supreme bliss, the knowledge of that supreme state. Then obviously then the person is not disturbed at all. Nothing in the world tempts that person. But for a seeker, one can even take it at a simpler level. That the proper understanding of Vedanta will make us equanimous. How? Because we understand correct deeply that it is all temporary. I am a witness who never becomes affected by any of these. Whatever happens to the BMI, I am a Sakshi. Whatever happens to the in the world outside also, I am a Sakshi of that. And as a Sakshi, I am uninvolved, unaffected observer. So the more I abide in my true nature as a Sakshi, the less I am affected because the Sakshi is out of it. As a Jiva, I feel I am going through, but the Sakshi is the witness of that Jiva also, who is going through this. So Sakshi Bhav, when one comes to the pain of the body also is witnessed, the difficulties of the mind are also witnessed, the insecurities of the intellect also are witnessed. But by itself, who is that witness? That is Sachidananda Swarup Atma, which is remains unaffected. So the result of that knowledge is what? That I am a Sakshi. Drashta dukkheshu anudvega. No dukkha will disturb that person. In the Gita, it is said, Yasmin sthito na dukkhena guruna api vichalyate. In the 6th chapter, he says that. Having established in which heaviest of sorrows will not disturb this person. See, death itself is nothing for them, then what else? What sorrow more than death? Death itself is like a joke for them. What will worldly sorrows do? Nothing it will do. So, drishta dukkheshu anudvegaha vidyaya prastutam phalam. Yat kritam bhranti velayam. Whatever was done in delusion, meaning in the body identification, whatever karmas were done, yat kritam bhranti velayam, nana karma jugupsitam. That one may have done out of attachment, out of insecurity. So many karmas one has done in delusion. Sometimes they may be even harmful karmas, prohibited karmas. Yat nana karma jugupsitam. Paschat naro vivekena tat katham kartum arhati. When one has come to the state of proper discrimination or realization, why will one do those? Whatever may have happened in the dream. Suppose in the dream, one was being chased by a tiger and one was running frenetically to save one's life. Now one gets up. When one gets up, what will one do? Will one run? Here a tiger is chasing. Nothing, running stops. One suddenly realizes, it was just a dream, not real at all. Maybe one got up with a shock and palpitations are there, the heart is beating fast. No one looks around, where am I, who am I? In a few moments one realizes, I am on my bed, nothing has happened. Why will one then get up and start running? There is no tiger, there is nothing happening. That sounds very silly that suddenly one man gets up and starts running. Why? Because the dream tiger is chasing me. That never happens. Same way here. One who has awakened to that state, why will that person ever engage in things which one was engaging earlier in the state of delusion? Meaning so much of dependency on the world, so much of attachment, and then the sorrow as a result of that, all that just goes away. Why? Earlier shloka was said, no? Swananda Anubhava. One experiences that supreme bliss of the self, Shanti, Paramatriptihi, incomparable bliss, all that one experiences. So when one lives in the world also thereafter, nothing of the world will affect that person. Why? Because internally one is established in the absolute. So this is the logic that why this person will not experience the dukkha. Drishta dukkheshu anudvega. So the dukkha doesn't stop from coming, meaning the world remains temporary. The attitude of this Jivan Mukta has changed because one no more identifies with it for one's own bliss. One is experiencing the bliss of the self. One. See, even in a state of Vairagya, this happens. Great amount of Vairagya happens, equanimity will happen. But here is the person established in the Supreme Self whose nature is equanimity. From the state of Vairagya, because of some Vasana pressure, one may fall down. But the earlier shloka, what it said, if you take the succeeding steps properly, the preceding ones will become nullified. So in the same way here, when one has reached the absolute, then there is no question of falling. Yad gatva na nivartanti. Then one will never come back into the world of delusion, temptation. So wrong actions will not happen, or actions out of attachment, they will not happen. Why this is important for us to know? Because this is what we seek or not. Paramananda Prapti we want and Dukkha Nivritti we want. Now Paramananda Prapti was explained in the earlier two verses that how this person will experience the Paramananda, Param Shanti, Param Tripti, Swat, Swananda, all that was explained. Then what about Dukkha? Dukkha Nivritti also we want. That Dukkha Nivritti happens like this. It is very interesting. If you observe how Dukkha or Sukha or anything we experience, there are three steps in that. Suppose we take the example of Dukkha. So first there is an object. Suppose somebody brought Karela. Now market nothing else is available. All potato, onion, brinjal, this, that, everything is taken. Now only Karela was available. So the Karela was brought and the Karela sabji is made. Now I don't like Karela, let us say. Now that Karela sabji comes in the front. The moment that Karela sabji comes in the front, disturbance in the mind. Why did you make Karela? I don't like Karela. Still you made this Karela. Disturbance. See, by itself Karela cannot give dukkha. By itself is agitation of the mind also cannot give dukkha. Then what will give dukkha? Because of this agitation of the mind, when I entertain the thought, I am unhappy. I don't like it. When I associate with this aham, the small I, then only I will become Dukhi. Sukha and Dukkha both are one vritti in the mind. There is a thought in the mind connected to this small I. If that connection is not there, there is no Dukkha only. There is no Sukha, there is no Dukkha. Because the mechanism is like this. Object's contact with the mind, and a thought has to rise in the mind about I. Merely response of the mind will not make a person dukhi. Until the person has the I thought about I am dukhi, I am unhappy, I am miserable, I don't like it. You may say, but that thought has come first, then only the agitation in the mind has come. Because I don't like it, so I am disturbed. Correct. Sequence may be anything. Object comes, I see, I react that I don't like, now my mind is disturbed. My point is, till that small I doesn't associate with it, there is no dukkha. Which means object cannot bring dukkha. If that same Karela sabji, I start developing some taste for it, I keep eating, I develop a taste for it. After a few days, if that Karela is brought, what will happen? No dukkha. The vritti, dukkhakara vritti is not there in the mind. If dukkhakara vritti is not there in the mind that I am dukhi, no dukkha. So object by itself doesn't give dukkha. Association with the object also doesn't give dukkha. It is a dukkhakara vritti which makes me dukhi. In the case of the Jivan Mukta, the dukkhakara vritti only is gone. Gone in the sense, one knows that it is false. It will not arise. It will not disturb that person because the small I is known to be false. Like see, Gurudev didn't like brinjal. Now, because many people ask the question, how does a Jivan Mukta live? Will that Jivan Mukta not have any likes and dislikes? No, some prarabdha karma will be there. The Jivan Mukta may like something, may dislike something, but that doesn't affect them because they have falsified the ego only. For us, that likes and dislikes are the means for experiencing happiness or sorrow. For them, they are reveling in the internal bliss. By some karma, prarabdha, whatever it is, that jiva, that entity at that moment feels like Ramakrishna used to like Rasagulla. So to bring him back to the body identification, he will always say that keep Rasagulla next to me. When I come out of Samadhi, keep Rasagulla. Because if I eat that Rasagulla, then I will come to body level, then I can talk to all of you. Otherwise, again the mind will go back. What a condition he was in. We have to struggle to go into Samadhi. He has to struggle to come to body identification. What a contrast. To keep him in body level, he says, oh, you keep this Rasgulla here. Then the attention of the mind will be here. Otherwise, it will again go into Samadhi. So now there's an appearance of like and dislike there. Gurudev doesn't like brinjal, Ramakrishna likes Rasagulla. But their like and dislike is completely different from our like and dislike. Our like and dislike, what happens? We are overwhelmed by it completely. Their like and dislike is existing for some reason. It is there. They are not affected by it. Because the I thought, that dukhi thought, dukkhakara vritti, they know it is false. It doesn't exist. It is not real at all. Like when we see the movie, we know it is not real. So we don't get affected. Now those who think it is real, they will cry, they will weep, they will laugh, they will get excited, they will blow whistle, anything they will do. Why? So they think it is actually happening. And extreme cases, people get heart attack also. They just die because their favorite hero died. So that is the difference. In this master, the dukkhakara vritti only, even if it rises, it is known to be false. It is not real. So drishta dukkhayeshu anudvega. Anudvega means it has no power on them. Drishta dukkheshu anudvega. Prastutam vidyaya phalam. That's the result of this knowledge. So actually, this is a state of realized master only. But we are bringing it down to one level simpler for us to apply so that we evolve. Otherwise, this is the result of Brahma Vidya. That no dukkha will make that person miserable because that person is reveling in the bliss of the self. So there is no question of them going through dukkha like we go through. So dukkha nivritti has happened. Interesting it is how dukkha nivritti has happened by absorption in the self, not by removing objects of dukkha. What we try to do is remove the objects of dukkha so that I am not dukhi. I don't like Karela, you take this Karela away. I don't like this person, dismiss him from my eyesight. We try to remove the object of dukkha so that we don't feel dukhi. They have removed the subject. No dukkha only after that. The Mr. I so and so only is gone. That's the approach of Sanatan Dharma. Don't try to remove the object, remove the subject. If subject gone, sukha, dukkha, everything gone. Even if it arises, one knows it is false. That is vidyaya phalam. So it didn't say that it won't arise. The udvega that it brings, that will not rise. In our mind, because of the dukkha-kara vritti, there will be lot of agitation, disturbance. I can't be equanimous. Any, it will lead to any harmful consequences also. More and more dukkha one experiences, then one says, I don't want to live, one commits suicide or drugs, depression, anything. None of that will happen to them. In fact, if you see in their life, the reasons for sorrow are much more. Why? Number one, they take up the sorrow of the devotees. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, he asked Mother Kali that why am I suffering? Because he had throat cancer and his whole back had some boils. At one point, his back had a lot of boils. So he asked Mother Kali that why am I suffering? Why is this body suffering? I've been into samadhi and samadhi avastha. Actually, that energy of samadhi will purify the whole body. So technically, the Jivan Mukta's body cannot have any disease at all. So Mother Kali replied, that is because the devotees who touch your feet, their karma, negative karma, your body is taking away so that they don't suffer. Ramakrishna said, oh, is that so? Said, okay. And he explained in the satsang, he explained, Vivekananda immediately he stopped all the devotees from going and touching his feet. Next day, Ramakrishna called him, fired him, saying that if this body can be of use to even one person and the suffering of that one person is less, I am ready to take 100 times birth and suffer. So don't stop them. See, their dukkha, we can't imagine also. The amount of negative karma of the devotee that the Jivan Mukta absorbs, the devotee also doesn't know that much. So for them, the causes of dukkha can be many. If somebody touches our feet, nothing will happen to us. But somebody touches Jivan Mukta, their negative karma will go to them and they are bearing it on their body. So that is one cause of dukkha. Second cause of dukkha can be that society doesn't understand, so they condemn, criticize, even crucify the masters. Because the master will speak the truth. And truth is that it is beyond caste, community, creed, gender, nationality, everything. So all kinds of controls that the society has put for ego, all those controls the master will not bother about. So the society, those controls and the ego, when they are threatened, those people will become reactive, violent. So many people were there. Even for every master who has been in public life, There have been people who have been critics and opposing the master and even trying to harm, hurt, so many things they will do. So it will be the devotees' negative karma, it will be the master is not accepted by people, so they condemn, criticize. That is also a dukkha. Third, some of them have done so much of tapasya that they have not bothered about the body. So the body also will have trouble by itself. Because how much can the body survive? Ramana Maharshi, he was lying in that Patal Gufa and Sheshadri Swami found him there. And rats and insects and whatnot has gone and eaten away his leg, and he's so no attachment to the body, he's absorbed in the Samadhi avastha. But when that person gets realized, the body is still affected, no, afterwards also. So whole life he was limping around. But it doesn't affect them because they have gone beyond the body identification. What I'm saying is that they have causes for dukkha, which you and I can't even imagine. But still, they will remain unaffected. Why? Because that vritti, that I am dukhi, will not arise. Because that I has got falsified. Meaning, even if that dukhi, that vritti arises, it is like the role that one is playing. That role is a false role. It is not true. So that way, the Jivan Mukta lives. And so when this is their state, actions, so they will never do like earlier how the deluded state was bringing out some actions, that such actions will never happen from them. Meaning dukkha nivritti is one thing that they achieve, and all the karmas which are done out of ajnana and moha, they all also stop because the cause is gone, ignorance is gone, so delusion gone. Like the example we gave earlier, one wakes up, then the karmas of the dream they end. But here we see still some actions happening. That action is happening because by the prarabdha karma for the body and for the benefit of the world outside. The Jivan Mukta says, I am a Sakshi, I am not this entity. So no wrong karma can ever happen from the Jivan Mukta because the Jivan Mukta will never act out of ego. We act out of ego, so we get clouded sometimes and wrong karma will happen. Because attachment, aversion, something will be there which will push us, and somewhere something wrong we will end up doing. Here, as it was said in the shloka, there is no delusion only. There is no moha. There is no ajnan. So there is no question of doing any wrong karma. So if we understand from that standpoint, and if we see that certain types of karmas a Jivan Mukta is doing, which we may feel are not right, then we should try to understand why those karmas are happening. Because they can never do wrong. Why they can never do wrong? The reason is they have gone beyond ego. So if a Krishna did not act in a certain way and acted in a particular way, so many people have the objection against Sri Krishna for the Mahabharat war, that he did so much of adharma. Now, if we know that he is the Lord and he is the one who has gone, he is avatar and there is no ego, then instead of finding fault, we should try to understand why he did what he did. What was the reason? Was he really responsible? Not responsible? Same way with Bhagwan Ram. Then we will learn much more. So from a Jivan Mukta standpoint, Dukkha Nivritti has happened, Avidya Nivritti has happened, ego is also not there. So their actions actually become a great source of learning, that how they are acting. And that's why no scripture prescribes any law for a Jivan Mukta. Whatever the Jivan Mukta does becomes a law, because acting out of the state of egolessness. So for today, we will stop here. Any questions?
Namaste, Swamiji. You said that uh, Vairagya leads to Bodha, Bodha leads to Uparati, and Uparati leads to peace. So what leads to Vairagya?
Vivek leads to Vairagya.
And what leads to Viveka?
Satsang.
So basically Karma Yoga.
Satsang.
Satsang. Okay.
Satsang. Listening to the scriptures or a katha or Bhagwan Nam or being in the company of realized people or being in the company of devotees. So the company of the truth or people who have realized the truth or devotees who are striving for the truth or scriptures who reveal the truth. That is all called satsang.
Okay.
What leads to satsang? Punya leads to satsang. What leads to punya? Sat karma leads to punya.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi